feels like there's a chaotic storm brewing inside my brain, and that I will never actually be able to write down all the words as they're trying to come, but I also don't feel like there's enough substance here for it to actually mean anything. However, I do feel that there is something important, not necessarily to actually be said and recorded, but something important to be gotten out. Like, there's something inside me that needs to be expressed. Whether it's expressed actually to something or about something or not, it needs to be gotten out of my system, as it were, and I don't know quite what it is. And I think that allowing myself to actually have the freedom to just speak into the void and, like, actually talk, as opposed to talking about whatever I felt was important versus what actually is important. Like, I have this weird disparity of thoughts between where I am and where I want to be, and I tend to think that where I am isn't good enough and where I want to be is sort of an ideal, and then that ideal is never going to be possible. You can't ever realize the ideal that you just keep trying to push forward. But also, the imperfection of humanity, as it were, is sort of what makes humans able to strive and be more. So you would never actually want to be able to get to where you're heading for, and even if once you get there you might not really fully appreciate the distance unless you've seen everything along the way possible, which is almost impossible for humans to do. Like, there are experiences that even if we experience them in full detail to the best of our extent, we will not have a 100% perfect recreation of them in our minds, because the past is more something that we regulate to for we only remember the important things, which aren't everything, and the important things can vary from person to person. Like, for me, a large part of my childhood was video games, and it ended up being useful to me specifically because it was a coping mechanism for how my brain works. It was a way to escape into a different world and to have a different brain chemistry than the one that I have. So the ability to sort of learn how my brain gates function in specific ways that other people don't do necessarily, and some people do. So now I am having a existential crisis that I have been having for a while now, but from a different perspective finally, because I've been working towards getting to this different perspective. And now that I'm here, it's not disappointing per se, but it is different than what I was expecting. Isn't that always the way, right? So what do I do differently? I try not to give away so much of myself. I only now try and gamble with what I'm willing to lose, but I still have the ability to push forward. You see, I've had a lot more leeway than I had allowed myself to use up until recently, and I still do. Like, I have a lot of free wiggle room that I was too afraid to use, that I am now trying to use to the best of my ability. And also, it is important to note, not trying to expect anything from the actions that I'm doing, but simply doing the actions. Doing them for the sake of doing them, which is incredibly freeing, feels great, and ends up still yielding the results that I want somehow at the end of the day. I don't know how, I don't know why, it just seems to be what works. So, like, recently there's been a person who has been weird, and it's like, what I expect from them is never the case. What I hope for is almost never a possibility, and then when I am expecting to give up or for things to have no effect, it seems that they are at the most effective, and like they are pushing back towards me when I am trying to push away, and vice versa. When I am trying to push towards them, they are trying to push away. It seems kind of like we are intrinsically linked in this fashion, but I don't really know what to do with that. So I'm planning on trying not to do anything with it, because anything that I do try will end up falling short. So trying is not what is the answer. The answer is doing without doing, trying without trying, and like living without having to try and push the effort forward. So not to say that there shouldn't be effort in my living, but that at my current new plateau of living, the world is so easy. And I keep trying to expect there to be more troubles and issues, and the troubles and issues are whatever I invite. And I've been inviting tons of them, and I haven't received nearly any. So now I'm instead going to live in the moment, try and actually accept things for what they are, and then if trouble does arise, I feel like I will be better suited to deal with it. Not necessarily saying that I will have the tool set for it, but I will have the ability not to panic and to realize that I can do a lot more than I think that I can do. So, the skills that I have basically become amplified over the last couple of days. And I am able to more appropriately seize control of myself and where I am. I have more physical strength, more mental strength, more emotional strength. And with all of these things accounted for, I realize how much I give away to, if not people, to the world itself, to the aether. I throw away most of my power and ability and do nothing with it because I feel or felt that it would have been an insurmountable wall of I cannot do this thing, this action, this I cannot obtain this thing that I want to obtain. And it's not so much that that is the truth, it's the truth is that I can obtain it by trying not to obtain it. And that seems to be the way the world works. You get people to love you by not trying to make them love you. Because if you try to make them, they're not going to want to. But if you don't try to make them, then they will do so unwillingly. Or not necessarily unwittingly, I suppose. Where if I am trying to be someone I'm not, that doesn't end up benefiting anyone. But if I am who I am to the best of myself, that benefits everyone, myself included, and those who would choose to follow my path. Or, not necessarily my path, but, follow in the life that I'm putting forth. Like, there's a person who is actively choosing to still be part of my life, despite me having pushed and pushed and pushed and tried to get them away, tried to get them close, tried to give them whiplash, basically. And they are still willingly attempting to be a part of my life and to try and be something important to me. And still, up until recently, my psyche has been telling me, oh, there's going to be, an upset, they're going to try and leave, they're going to do this, they're going to do that, and, trying to find answers where they don't exist, trying to find problems where they don't exist, trying to make there be a thing that isn't. So now, if I just don't let that happen, my day becomes so much easier to manage because guess what? Now I have so much more mental energy and I've also got all this additional physical energy where I can do everything that I would have done in a normal day and still have so much excess left over that I have been able to exercise in ways that I didn't think I could because I have a wellspring of energy and everything seems effortless. So the things that I would it's basically running on adrenaline without the burnout. It's pretty great. It's more of I was at a negative state and I have since become at a not necessarily zero but at like a low number. So I'm starting to gain something. And if I allow myself to actually seize it, I can make it something tangible, or end up making it into basically whatever I want. So I have the tools that I've taken the time to learn a set of tools that is even more beneficial to me going forward. Now that I have this additional willpower, this additional strength, I can basically surmount any odds that would be set against me, which is incredibly useful. Now, trying to think that this makes me some sort of additional superpower or anything is just foolhardy. It's the same sort of power that anyone else has. It's just more of I'm actually doing it for once, as opposed to letting something that isn't me take over for her. There is a part of me that isn't me, that wants to be the powerful part, that wants to be the problem creator, that wants to push for there to be more and more and more. Now, pushing for more isn't always a bad thing. However, if I end up I was basically creating my own problems just so I would have something to solve because I was so very bored. So now that I've gotten myself, not necessarily out of the loop, but in a state where I don't have to acknowledge the loop anymore, I now have so much everything. And realizing that I've had a lot of everything to begin with. I've been an incredibly fortunate person. I have a lot of gifts. I've had a lot of gifts my entire life. And still, I would try and push for there to be not necessarily more, but to be able to say I earned the things that I have outside of what I had. But there were still a lot of privileges that were given to me along the way. Does this mean that I'm undeserving of what I have? Not necessarily. But it also does mean that I do have more than some people. But I've also got less than some people. People who have started with less have gotten more. People who have started with more have gotten less. It's just, that's the way of the world. It's not necessarily so black and white as to say, hey, just because you're born to a specific scenario means that you get this. It's sort of a, you have the freedom to do whatever you want from any of the positions, but only those who are actually willing to strive for more. And you have to realize that sometimes the switch that allows you to strive for more is such a simple thing that it's hard to even, notice, right? So, seeing the world for what it is something that can be given to you from an early age or almost at the end of your life. And there doesn't seem to be any rhyme or reason to how we get there. So what do we do? Well, we just do the best we can with what we have. And that entire mantra has been basically what has been driving me forward.